Anyway, hello and good afternoon, and welcome to the latest episode of Mommy's Pocketbook. If you don't know what Mommy's Pocketbook is, it's all good because I'll explain. Basically, I named the show Mommy's Pocketbook because a woman's purse, or pocketbook per se, is very, very, very personal to her. And if you ever got the chance to peer inside, you would find quite a bit of information about that woman. Should you ever be so privy to do so, because it's not likely. But it gives you an insight into who that woman is, what makes her tick. So I call this Mommy's Pocketbook because I have all these records that used to be my mom's, and rather than sit and listen to them by myself, I figured I'd sit and listen to them with you to share what was hot in the streets back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, what were the youth and young adults of yesteryear listening to? And that is how we got this show. Each and every week I choose 10 random, randomly selected records from the bag of records. This is the 20th episode, so that's 200 records. Well, by the end of the show, it'll be 200 records we've gone through to listen to and discover little tidbits of information about them per my research, which is no special expertise from myself, just what is available to anyone who searches the World Wide Web. So, without further ado, let's get started with the first of our 10 randomly selecteds. I'm just going to open the page to my notes, you know. And let's get this show on and popping. So the first one is going to be coming from a superb group called the Dales. And just a little heads up, you might hear me talking over the music a little bit more because the big daddies, the big papas, the showrunners of all the music in all the world, except for give or take a handful of independents, Warner, Universal, and Sony, they don't like people to share music. So they always flag me for stuff. So I'm going to try to be as obscure with it as possible because they don't like people sharing music for free. So so that they don't flag me, you might hear me talk over the music a little bit more than I normally do, which I've started doing, but I guess I'm not talking over the music enough because they're still flagging me for like the most obscure songs. It's like, really, bro? You think I'm taking money out of the pockets of someone, of a group who, one, no longer exists, and two, probably only existed like 3 years? Really? Anyway, I'm not getting paid for this. I don't know why they be targeting me. But they be targeting everybody. They don't want nobody to share music. I don't know how they expect you to find out about these things. Just guess. Anyway, so the first choice out of our 10 selected is from the Dales. And the Dales is an R&B group from Harvey, Illinois. It was John Carter, Marvin Jr., Vernon Allison, Mickey McGill, and Chuck Barksdale. Johnny Carter was formerly of the group Flamingos. People called them the Mighty Dales. They performed for over 5 decades, sold millions of records. They started in 1952 when they were originally called the El Rays, and they were high school friends. They did a song for Chess Records, not much attention. Then they got signed to VJ Records, and the name was changed to the Dales. You know them for Stay in My Corner, which was first released on VJ, and then later was distributed by Cadet. So when you see it on the Billboard 1968 at number 10 and number 1 R&B for 3 weeks, it will say Cadet, even though it was first recorded on VJ. You're also known for Oh What a Night, written I guess around about 1955-56, which became an immediate R&B $1 million seller, released it on VJ, of course. And then 14 years later, in 1969, it hit the charts, stayed on there, and peaked at number 10 and number 1 R&B for 4 weeks. So let's get into this. Give Your Baby a Standing Ovation, which was a number 34. So that means it was a banger. It was top 40 hit on Hey Les, how are you? Great. Great. Tuned in while cooking. This is like the perfect show to listen to while doing other things because you can just kind of like, you know. So yeah, we're gonna get into "Give Your Baby a Standing Ovation," which hit the Billboard charts in 1973 and was 34 on that chart, which meant it was a banger because anything top 40 and under is considered a hit. It's written by Marv Johnson, Henry Williams, produced by Don David. If you don't know who that is, Detroit-based producer, label owner, everything. He's also was key in producing Disco Lady, which was done by Van McCoy from DC. So, Marv Johnson, singer, songwriter, pianist, influential in the development of the Motown style, primarily on the song "Come to Me," which was the first song released on Tamla. So yeah, and without further ado, let's get back to "Give Your Baby a Standing Ovation" by the Dells.
And as you walk around, stage of life, don't gotta make you feel proud. You know, no matter what the problem, there's one who understands. And you can rest assured, feel secure. She made you a holy man. Give your baby a standing ovation, and she sure. Give my hand to you. I'll give your baby standing ovation, and she sure. Give my hand to you. When you can't get no satisfaction, and the world is full of gloom, she gives you strength and comfort. And she walks into the room from the roar of 1,000 voices, of the sound you learn to know. When she calls your name, you can't feel no pain. You got a smile and a stand with you. Standing ovation, and she sure give her hand to you. And you can rest assured, feel secure. She made you a promise, baby. So give your baby, standing ovation. And she sure give her hand to you. I don't know about you, but I know you're my baby. Standing ovation.
I think another little awesome tidbit about the Dells is the 1991 Robert Townsend movie about our favorite R&B soul group that isn't even a real group, the Five Heartbeats, was based on the lives and careers of the Dells, and they were consultants on that movie for those characters and that music. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2004, and they still were touring in a newer incarnation through the 2000s teens. That's why they've been around for 5 decades. So let's flip it on over. Listen to the B-side. It's called Closer. Now, it is written by Carl Wolford, singer-songwriter, Kent Barker, and Robert Eaton, who was a soul singer and producer and member of the group called Brothers of Soul. What they did was he, along with Fred Bridges and Richard Knight, produced a slew of tracks for a whole bunch of different record labels like Zodiac, La Beat, Boo Records, and many, many more. So
I wanna get closer to you. Oh, closer. No more breaking up and you wrong. Girl, your breaking up takes much too long. I gotta get closer to you. I give to you, and you give to me. It's gonna be all the rest of me. Never let temptation intervene. No more evil powers ever come between. Let's get closer, just like fingers sticking in blood. Darling, that feeling too tempting. I wanna get closer to you. And even when we're close as we can be, but tell myself we're not close enough yet. While another are slowly dying. Let's make our love keep on multiplying. Let's get closer. The time that shoot to the shore. May it last, my dear, forever. I wanna get closer to you. Closer. Keep it together. Let's keep it together. Keep it together. Let's keep it together. I wanna get closer.
So yes, that's Closer by the Dells. If you just jumped on, you might wonder why I'm doing a little bit of extra talking. Just trying to obscure the music a little bit so that the copyright goons don't get me, because they keep coming for you, your dog. And all I want to do is share a little bit of information in a song. Nobody's stealing any money. If anything, I might be putting some money in your pocket because I might be making somebody actually go find this record and purchase it from you. But whatevs. Anyway, released on Cadet Records, which was a subsidiary of Chess, which, you know, of course, was built around 1965. Their name was changed from Argo because there was a record label called Argo in Great Britain of the same name. They didn't want any confusion. Eventually, Chess was bought by GRT, General Recorded Tape, a Cali-based recording label, and that was in 1969. But by 76, they were acquired by All Platinum Records, and if you recognize that name, it's because All Platinum Records was Sylvia Robinson's record label that became Sugar Hill. And then yada, 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 changes in ownership down the road through MCA, 1985. And now, if you're looking for any represses of the Dells, you're going to have to holler at the big dog, Universal Music Group. Next, on our second choice out of Mommy's Pocketbook, is going to be from a group called The Honey Home. Female R&B group from LA. It was Carolyn Willis, Edna Wright, and Shelley Clark. You know, and they had the fortune of being discovered by, or catching the attention of one Eddie Holland, just having been together only for like 3 months. They were out doing their thing, and Eddie Holland caught their attention. And if you don't know who Eddie Holland is, it's Eddie Holland of Holland Dozier Holland, aka the Motown Sound, the masterminds behind the music and lyrics of the Supremes, and so many, 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 many more. At this time, when they had found this group, they had left Motown because Motown was not being forthright with the Muncie. They were like, listen here, you owe me royalties, etc. So they left Motown, or were suing Berry Gordy, and they started their own labels, Hot Wax and Invictus. So Honeycomb became their first signing on Hot Wax, their first signing group, and that's their first song that they released from them on that record label was While You Were Out Looking for Sugar, which went to 26 on the R&B charts and 62 on the pop, which doesn't make it a banger, but still makes it hot. Anyway, so the Honeycomb, produced by Holland Dozier Holland. They only stayed around for about 4 years, but they were hot in the 70s. And it's the cool thing about them is though they were LA based, because of their Holland Dozier Holland production and writing, their style was still really Detroit soul. And these were not women who just randomly were just out there. They already had experience singing or in and around the industry before they met Eddie Holland. But, for instance, Carolyn Willis had been a part of a group called the Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans. And they had a couple of hits, Why Do Lovers Break Each Other's Hearts and Not Too Young to Get Married. Shelley Clark was a former Ikeette, which was background singers for Ike and Tina Turner. And Edna Wright had a great background in singing in the church, and her sibling was also Darlene Love, singer actress, who was also at one point in time part of Bobby Sox and the Blue Jeans. Let's get into, I believe this is their follow-up hit to While You Were Out Looking for Sugar. It's called Girls It Ain't Easy. It's the Honeycomb. And it's written by Ronald Dunbar, who's an often collaborator in writing and producing music with Holland Dozier Holland. And you'll see on the album, the credit is to Edith Wayne. That's because Holland Dozier Holland could not use their own names to produce and write their music, because they were still in litigation with Motown and Berry Gordy Jr. So they often wrote under Edith Wayne, Edith Payne, and Stagecoach Productions. So if ever you see those, just know it was HDH, Holland Dozier Holland. And this is one of those songs. Did hit number 8 on the R&B charts back in those days. And of course, as a reminder, I did say that this was released on Hot Wax, which was Holland Dozier Holland's own imprint that they founded after they left Motown due to unpaid royalties and the suing of Motown and Berry Gordy. Let's listen to the B-side. It's called Feelings Gone. It's also written by Ronald Dunbar and Edith Wayne. Oftentimes, when you see each one credited, they're credited along with their co-conspirator or their partner Ronald Dunbar, who's also a funk singer, songwriter, and producer. So yes, and just last year we just lost the founding member of Edna Wright, who passed away at 76 years old on September 12th, 2020. The feeling's gone. The honeycomb.
We'd always remain. You said our love would be in vain. Now didn't you, baby? You changed everything about me but the name. Now didn't you, baby? There's nothing more to say. Let's go our separate ways. Oh, baby. How can I take you back into my arms? Oh, baby, when the feeling's gone. How can I forget what you've done? Oh, baby, when the feeling's gone. Where were you when I needed you? You know what you said to do. You said into each night some tears would fall. Now didn't you, baby? You said you loved me, but tried to hold away. Now didn't you, baby? It's all over, dear. I cried my last tear for you. But I want you to know I'm gonna keep on giving my love, but not to you, baby. I want you to know I'm gonna keep on needing someone, but it won't be you, baby.
Yes, that's the honeycomb right there. Let's jump into our number 3 out of Mommy's Pocketbook. Is coming from a group who I wasn't necessarily, familiar with, but kind of. Anyway, it's the Wallace Brothers, and it's funny because in the parentheses it says Irvin and Johnny, as if it's just two brothers named Irvin and Johnny, when in reality, the Wallace Brothers was actually a 6-man band full of cousins, usually led by John Simmons and Irvin Wallace, who played the guitar, and they also had Cookie and Ernest, who played the organ. And sometimes they would have, I believe there was another brother that would join in sometimes. But yeah, so a group of cousins who had a 6-man band. They came to the attention of Cleveland Warnock, who in 1963, but Cleveland Warnock was he wrote songs with Billy Barton in the 1940s and 50s for movie cowboy Jimmy Wakely. He never really strayed away from the music business, so he heard the Wallace brothers, from another person named Wallace who was unrelated, and he liked their potential. They were really young too, ranging from the age of 14 to 16, and from Atlanta. Warnock was from East Point, and so he would transport them from Atlanta to East Point to have rehearsals in his basement. And then he got his label, Royal, launched, and put the Wallace Brothers on there to debut that label. Their first single, Faith, with other side being I'll Let Nothing Separate Me, was written by Ernest Wallace. And the Wallace Brothers started doing more gigging, and a Nashville DJ ended up playing Faith on his popular radio show, and it got a whole bunch of interest. So a deal was struck with a guy named Russell Sims i.e. the record label owner, because this is released on Sims Records. And so the deal was for him to be able to get the next copies of Faith and any future recordings. And Warner would also receive percentage of the sales from Sims and co-publishing rights to the Wallace Brothers songs. And then, of course, more stations started to follow. Yada, yada, yada. They got more popular. And we're going to listen to two of their songs. Precious Words, which did hit the charts, but not the Billboard charts, because at the time, Billboard didn't have a survey for black music. So there was a musical survey called Cashbox Black Music Survey. It spent 6 weeks on the Cashbox Black Music Survey. So it was a banger, just not a Billboard tabulated banger. Anyway, written by Claudia Robinson, often touted as Claude Robinson, blue-eyed soul singer and writer. This is Precious Words by the Wallace Brothers. Sorry about that. I knocked my sign out. It's coming. Yeah, sorry about that interruption. The power got knocked off of the wall. But it was just power, so no damage, no records were harmed in that little kerfluffle. Anyway, so yeah, that was Precious Words. It was a pretty nice song. So they were released on, like I told you, they made that deal with Russell Sims, and Warner made that deal where Sims would get all the next recording, and Warner would get some kickback on that for co-publishing rights, since, of course, he was the person that brought the Wallace Brothers to fruition. And they released that on Sims Records, and so that became their distro instead of being on Royal Records, which was Warner's record label. So this is the B-side. It's called Your Mind. It's written by Johnny Simmons, who was one of the cousins who was on lead singing for the Wallace Brothers. So I was just giving you a little bit of background about Sims. It was an independent label that was started by Russell Sims, active in the 1950s and 60s, and then again in the 1990s to 2000s. When they started recording, it was mostly country musicians in LA in the early 1950s. And in the early 1960s, Sims relocated to Nashville and began to add black gospel and R&B to his roster. By late 1968, it was shuttered, though, until its reactivation during the 1990s. Like I said, it was back reactivated 1990s to early 2000s.
And we belong together. Yes, we belong with each other. And I belong with you.
like 14 to 16-year-olds, so they sound pretty dope to me. Anyway, that's the Wallace Brothers. Let's get into number 4. 4 is gonna be a super duper one. Let me just reinforce this PowerPoint because we don't have time for that, okay? Okay, we don't have time for that. Time we do not have. So I just did that. So, and it just fell again. So I'm gonna do it again because, you know, it happens. Yeah. So anyway, let's get into it. It is from a super duper group called the Doobie Brothers. Ooh. And I was so excited that I didn't even write down the B-side part. But anyway, it's the Doobie Brothers, rock group formed in San Jose, California. It's Patrick Simmons on vocals and guitars from 1970 to 75. Tom Johnson on vocals and guitar. That's Tom Johnson who was on vocals and guitar from 1970 to 75. Terran Porter on bass, and John Hartman and Miles Hasek on drums. I said I had to point out that Tom Johnson was just on vocals and guitar from 1970 to 75 because you might know Doobie Brothers with Michael McDonald. But Michael McDonald didn't join until 1975 and stayed with him until 1982. But then he was, of course, solo after that. So let's go ahead and get into it. Well, I'll give you another reminder. You might know them for Listen to the Music, which is a number 4 hit for him. A Long Train Running, a number 8 hit for him. Blackwater, number 1 hit for him. Take Me in Your Arms and Rock Me, which is a number 11 hit for them. And Minute by Minute by Minute, 1979, number 14 hit from, and so many more. Let's get into it. What a fool believes. That's what's happening right here. It's Doobie Brothers.
Everybody else would surely know. Just watching her go. To reason away. What to say. Anybody else would surely know. He's watching her go. Oh,
dope all-time classic. And of course, as it should be, it's written by... Now, remember I said that Tom Johnson was on the vocals and guitar from 1970-75. This came out in 1979, hitting the charts at number 1, stayed there for a week. And of course it's a banger because it was written by Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins. Do you know Kenny Loggins? Kenny Loggins from Everett, Washington, raised in Alhambra, California, pop rock singer and songwriter and guitarist. You know him for the Caddyshack, I'm alright, don't nobody worry about me. Anyway, that was number 7 on the charts in 1980. Footloose, Footloose, kick off your Sunday shoes. Number 13. No, sorry, number 1. I read that wrong. Number 1 for 3 weeks in 1984. And of course, action adventure Top Gun. Into the danger zone. When you got that kind of power with you and you're already Michael McDonald, don't stop to watch the wheels. Now remember they're a rock group, right? So they still brought the rock to you when they brought that nice little smooth little R&B tinged pop to you. Blue-eyed soul, if you will. But they still a rock group, so don't sleep. This is funky. She put a top down on her guy. I got a mind to cover, but if you think you need come on, hold tight. I got it all right tonight. Look out, hold on, don't stop, what will go right. Look out, hold on, I got to come on. When I play the color of the eye, got to have a little, oh, it's sweet, young thing. I got my eyes to cover them, but if you think you need a love, come on, hold tight, I got it all right now. Look out, hold on, don't stop, what wheels go round. Look out, hold on, I got to come around. Yes, don't sleep on the Doobie Brothers ever. They sold over 40 million albums worldwide, and I'm sure they're still selling. They made 13 albums together. They ended up breaking up or disbanding, if you will, in 1982. Hence why it only says Michael McDonald joined and was there from 1975 to 82. Michael McDonald, of course, went out on his own. You might know him from 1982's number 4 hit on the Billboard charts. I keep forgetting, not in love anymore. Yes. And y'all won't be there. I'm sorry, I have a mosquito bite. Which was number 19 in 1984. And also, like, even his duets with Patti LaBelle, On My Own. Why did it end this way? Which is always in my head randomly for some odd reason. Maybe because I'm on my own. Anyway, message received. That was released on Warner Brothers Records 1958. Warner Brothers was started by Jack Warner as a soundtrack factory for the movie studio, Warner Brothers Movie Studios. They've had other sub-labels like Reprise, Sire, Maverick. All of them big names have been on those record labels. And various Warner record imprints like Warner's Nashville, Warner Jazz, Warner Western. It was rebranded as just Warner Records. eventually, and it became the flagship of the Warner Music Group, which is now the big house that owns everything. Opulence! Anyway, let's get into our number 4 choice out of Mommy's Pocketbook. It comes from Cokie Escovedo. Who's Cokie Escovedo, as you may ask? Well, you might have heard of somebody named Sheila E. Well, that's what the E stands for, Escovedo, because he is none other than the uncle of Miss Sheila E. and the brother of Pete Escovedo, Alejandro Escovedo, Mario, and Javier Escovedo. He's a percussionist. He rose to fame as part of the group, a member of the group Santana. You know, Carlos Santana, he was a member of that group. And he got quite a bit of prominence from his percussion savvy when he was in Santana. And his playing can be heard on the 3rd Santana album, which included the hit Everybody's Everything and No One to Depend On, which he co-wrote. So, yes. Cokie Escovedo. Let's listen to Make It Sweet. Cokie and his brother Pete ended up leaving Santana to form their own Latin rock hybrid called Azteca and recorded 2 albums. So this is around the time after he had left Santana and, of course, went solo. So, yes. Solo Cokie Escovedo.
Who's next in line to move it on up, to move it on up, to move it on up, yeah, baby, to keep the spirit flowing. You need direction in your life, a place to go and visit. So just send me on up, send me on up, send me away, yeah, baby. Let me lift the sky, and when you pass me by, make it sweet. Come on, baby, be you and me. All get together, let's make it sweet. Oh, darling, oh, you and me. We'll make it sweeter, 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 make it come on, baby, hold me tighter. I'm in love. We're gonna make it sweet. Oh, darling, just you and me. Oh, come on, baby, don't we just dance and move? Next in line to move it on up, to move it on up, to move it on up, yeah, baby, to keep the spirit flowing. You need some pressure in your life, and the moment it brings. So just send me on up, send me on up, send me away. Ah, baby, let me lift the sky, and when you pass me by, make it sweet. Come on, baby, let me hate it. Oh, darling, don't you understand? Oh, you and me, come on, baby.
So, yes, Cokie Escovedo. Oh, thanks, Les. I love this too. It's pretty funky right here. So, yes, that's Cokie Escovedo right there. Awesome percussionist extraordinaire. This is when he was on his solo thing. He was always in demand. So, you know, even though he had left Santana, you think, why you left Santana? Santana was... Yeah, but he was always in the band because he was a great percussionist. He ended up touring with Stevie Wonder. And then he released, you know, a couple more solos. Well, he ended up having 3 releases. This is the other side of that. It's called Rebirth. Both these songs written by Herman Eberich Um, but they're Coque Escovedo songs. Anyway, and he ended up touring with Santana again, joining back with Santana, but also Herbie Hancock. And in the 1980s, he toured with his niece, one Sheila E., and the purple one himself, Prince. So, Coque was getting his bag, okay? You might not know Coque Escovedo unless you're into music like that, but it's dope. This is called Rebirth.
It has a meaning, yeah. Ooh, something more than feeling. Love, something more than love. Love, something that will keep it. I'll tell you, it's got a meaning all its own. So beautiful. Take the beauty of a natural thing, and you will see what it takes to be a free-loving man. It takes a woman every night and every day of your life. You need someone, even if it's just a passing affair. It has a meaning, yes. Ooh, love is something more than feeling. Love is something more than love. Love is something that's worth keeping. You know that it has a feeling on its
So yes, Coque Escovedo. This was released on Mercury Records, and if you know anything about Mercury Records, it was formed in 1945 in Chicago by Irving Greenberg Adams, Ray Greenberg, and Arthur Talmadge, and they became a major force within the jazz, blues, classical, rock and roll, and country area. And then, to top it off, they opened their own pressing plant. So they were not only just recording these, they were able to press out records, which made them major players amongst, some larger, more competitive record labels like Columbia, Decca, Capitol, RCA Victor. And so, then of course down the line they ended up changing ownership a lot with Dutch company Philips Phonographische Industries, PPI, and then of course further on down the line Deutsche Grammophon, GmbH, which led to the Polygram merger. And if you're looking for Coque Escovedo's represses of those, now you gotta holler at the big dog Universal Music Group. Let's get into our number 6 choice out of Mommy's Pocketbook, which is coming from a super, super mega group. You probably heard of them, pretty sure. It's Diana Ross and the Supremes. Don't have to really give you a whole bunch of background out of them, but I will. I will say that, just FYI, they started off as the Premettes with 4 girls. Diana Ross, Murray Wilson, Florence Ballard, and Barbara Martin. But then, 1961, it was just the 3 without Barbara Martin. They were called the Premettes at first, and then they became the Supremes. And this was probably one of the last records that actually still featured Diana Ross. And this is around the time when they were pushing her out front. It was Diana Ross and the Supremes. Which pretty much catapulted her into going solo. So this is called No Matter What Sign You Are on the charts in 1969. It hit number 31, written by Barry Gordy Jr. and Henry Cosby, who was a member of the Funk Brothers, which was basically a production group that did a lot of work for different artists, many Motown artists and others. And he also was a master of the sax and did a lot of the saxophone hooks on Motown songs. That's Henry Cosby right there. Anyway, no matter what sign you are, Donna Ross and the Supremes. The Supremes, written and produced by Barry Gordy Jr. and Henry Cosby. Also, did I mention that Henry Cosby is the co-writer of Tears of a Cloud? So they had choice writing and production. They always did. If it wasn't Holland, Dozier, and Holland, then you got Henry Cosby, you got Barry Gordy Jr. also writing hits for them. Let's listen to the B-side. It's called The Young Folks. That is written by Alan Story. Alan Story is a soul, disco, and funk songwriter who worked mainly for a lot of Motown artists. And he also was a singer of his own right, who released one album in the 70s under another moniker of his called Shady. Shady Hassan. And also, this is co-written by George Gordy, one of Barry Gordy's brothers. There was a lot of Gordys. This is called The Young Folks.
They say yes, and you say no. They ask you why, and you close the door. My old friend, I thought you knew by now. You can't do that to young folks. No, 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 no. You might not like it, but I've got to tell you. Gotta tell you. You better make room for the young folks. Yeah, 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 yeah. They're marching with signs. They're standing in line. Yeah. Protesting your right to turn out the light in their life. Here's the deal, accept it if you will. They're coming on strong, it's their time to be. My old friend, I thought you knew by now. You gotta make way for the young folks. Yeah, 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 yeah. You may not like it, but I've got to tell you. Gotta tell you. Oh, you better make way. You gotta make way. You better make way for the young folks.
gotta make way for the young folks. That was, like I said, probably one of the last records that Diana Ross did with the Supremes because she went solo in 1970. Of course, that was released on Motown Records, founded in January 12th of 1959, but as Tamla, which was actually the first record label. And then later on in the year, Berry Gordy Jr. Founded Motown, and then when he incorporated in March of 1960, he decided that he was going to make Motown the parent label of Tamla, and so that's how it became Motown. But Tamla was the beginning, actually. Just FYI. Let's get into another group. A little less known by me, but I'm aware, but I couldn't really call it. Anyway, the name is called the Mellow Moods, and there's probably a reason for that, because they weren't around but for so long. Well, they were, and then they weren't. I'll explain. Anyway, we're going to listen to Tell Love Hello, which was one of their first early singles. It was a female vocal group from Philly. They were first formed in 1968. And they played at local gigs around in the Philly area and were discovered by the famed Philly soul producers Gamble and Huff in 1969. But the thing about it, what did I say, 1969? By the time the first single came out, they had already disbanded. But they ended up getting hired as backup singers for Billy Paul. They did a few tours. And yeah, that's what happened with that. Let's get into Tell Love Hello, Gamble and Huff. It's on North Bay Records, which is not a lot of information about North Bay Records. But let's check out the tunes.
Oh, not too long ago, I met a boy I knew was just for me. We became the very best of friends, and I knew that this friendship would never end. One day he didn't show up at a old meeting place, and it's been a long time since I last saw his face. So, if you see him, you say I guess you are living. Your love alone, if you see him, you say I guess you are living. Oh, it hurt me so, so to lose a love I thought was made just for me. Now all I have is his memory. I've been searching and searching, oh where can he be? Oh, I'll never see him at a old meeting place. It's been a long time since I last saw his if you see him, I guess you are
So, Pat Cummings was the lead of Mellow Moods, and a producer started around in the early 2000s to ask if she wanted to revive the group. And she was just like, no, but you could do it with my daughter. And so they did with her daughter, and also added her granddaughter's vocals, and then she did background on it. And they re-recorded some Mellow Mood songs and some other soul classics, and this is in 2015. So there's still Mellow Moods re-releases and re-recordings out there that are fresh. That was Tell Love Hello, which wasn't necessarily a chart banger, but did receive much acclaim. Even though, like I said, by the time it came out, they had already broken up. Let's see if this is not a continuation of the other song, because it's called If You See Him. And I noticed that If You See Him was part of the hook for Tell Love Hello. So let's see what happens. Anyway, like I said, it was released on North Bay Records, which doesn't have a whole bunch of information about it. And I believe this is a continuation of Tell Love Hello, and it's fine. So, while that's playing, let me give you a little bit of background about Gamble and Huff. Just as a reminder, I know you know, and I know I've talked about it before. Kenny Gamble, Leon Huff, legendary soul, funky, disco producers, songwriters. They were founders of Philadelphia International Records, of course, which housed a lot of these artists that were featuring their Philly soul sound. Together, they've written and produced 175 gold and platinum records. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as non-performers in 2008, so very, very major. Also, on production, you had Norman Harris, who was a songwriter, producer, guitarist, and a seminal figure in putting together these Philly soul projects. He was a part of that whole phenomenon of putting those songs together as well. And he's the cousin of Major Harris from the Delphonics. So yes, the Mellow Moods. We're going to go ahead and fade that out, since that is just a continuation in instrumental form of Tell Love Hello. Awesome. We'll talk about that, how sometimes on some of these 7-inch singles, some of them are actual singles. So on the other side, you might have the same song. There might be a jam session where let's introduce the band, or it might be an instrumental like that one, or it might just be another version of that one, or even sometimes just the same song. So that was one of those times, which is why we don't have to play the whole thing. Let's just go into our number 8 choice. And another thing I noticed too was, like, I was looking at these records as they were stacked, and like, I don't know if you have 45s in your possession. Sometimes I just take a look at them and notice the quality of some of the actual records. Some of them are kind of thick, where others are really, 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 really thin. So it all depends on where it was pressed too. Who was doing the pressing? Like I said before, who was that? Mercury started doing their own pressing. They were like, listen, we don't have to add distros from another record label. We can do our own distribution, because we're gonna press our own, which was major business back then. Okay. So, our number 8 choice is coming from the 5 Stair Steps and Cubby. So, Cubby is actually one of the 5 Stair Steps, but only sometimes. That's why it says that. So, they were an R&B group, of course, from Chicago. It was brothers, Clarence Jr. on vocals, James on guitar, Kenny on bass, Dennis on drums, and their sister Aloha, and briefly Cubby. Okay, so there's all the Burke siblings, and you probably know them for 1970s number 8 in the charts. Ooh, child, is it gonna get easier? Just so you know, that is number 402 on the Rolling Stones 500 greatest hits of all time. So put some respect on their name. It's the 5 Stair Steps. This is the 5 Stair Steps and Cubby. They're known as the first family of soul, okay?
Don't know why is it that I'm lonely for you? Are you lonely for me too? We must be in love. I'll miss your tender kiss. Your tender kiss is what I want.
And they had the most dynamic writers and arrangers and producers on this, as it was Curtis Mayfield and the Donny Hathaway. Hello, you know Curtis Mayfield. I'm your love, I'm your brother, I'm your sister, I'm your you know all that. I'm your pusher. And yeah, you know Curtis Mayfield, Donny Hathaway, the Donny Hathaway, singer, songwriter, keyboardist, extraordinary composer, arranger. Donny Hathaway. That's who co-wrote and arranged and produced that for them. And also, on the other side, called Little Young Lover, co-written and produced by Curtis Mayfield and Johnny Pate, a jazz bassist, producer, and arranger. Of course, this group did disband at one point in time, and then they later regrouped and came back in the 1980s and renamed themselves the Invisible Man's Band. This is called Little Young Lover, as he just said.
Why don't you like me? Can't you see, honey? You're gonna drive me out of my mind. I can't sleep at night for thinking about you. You're looking so nice, and you're about to drive me crazy. When we're in school, and you're sitting next to me, I'm acting a fool just to get your attention. Can't you see? Little young lover with pigtails so long, I'll carry your books if you would only let me walk you home. When we're in school and you're sitting next to me, I'm acting a fool just to get your attention. Can't you see? Little young lover with pigtails so long, I'll carry your books if you will only let me walk you home. I am the young lover. Stay with me, young lover.
Little Young Lover right there. Like I said, co-written and produced by Curtis Mayfield and Johnny Pate. This was also released on Curtum Records, which was created by Curtis Mayfield and Eddie Thomas. It was a Chicago-based label that was one of the leading lights of the development of soul music throughout the 1970s. So it was initially distributed by Buddha Records, but then later on distribution moved to Warner, and then eventually RSO, then One Time Capital, and Boardwalk, and then eventually Curtin was sold to Rhino in 1997. Okay? So, yes, the 5 stair steps in Cubby. So we're almost nearing our end. We're at our number 9 of our 10 records that we've got out of Mommy's Pocketbook. This one says Gail, which means it belonged to my mom's sister, Gail. My mom and my aunt, her sister Gail, were quite close. They were like friends, sister friends. So even at one point in time, they had a singing group when they were young with one or two of their friends from school. And my mom would always talk about like how they had gotten discovered, but my grandmother, their mother, wouldn't let them go. So who knows what could have become of them had they been allowed to embark on whatever project was presented to them by that producer. What can you do? Water in the bridge. Who knows? So this is the Marvelettes. They could have been the next Marvelettes for all we know. But that's what happens sometimes when your parents don't see the bigger picture and they're worried about, no, I don't want you going there. So, just be careful. You got to err on the side of caution, but sometimes you got to take the chance and see what's happening first before you just go, no. Then again, I don't have kids, so what do I know? So this is the Marvelettes. And this is When You're Young and in Love. It hit the charts 1967, peaking at number 23. Written by DC extraordinaire Van McCoy. Singer-songwriter, producer, founder of the Vando label, often associated with being a disco producer, which he wasn't really comfortable with because he had done more than just disco. But when you're responsible for The Hustle, which was 1975, number one in R&B, and it won a Grammy, you kind of get associated with disco. Anyway, so this is the Marvelettes with When You're in Love, and I'll give you a little bit more information. It's a female R&B group from Inkster, Michigan. It was Gladys Horton, Georgiana Tillman Gordon, who was married to Bobby Rogers of the Miracles, Wanda Young, Katherine Anderson, and also Georgiana Tillman Gordon was married to Billy Gordon of the Contours. So they were, brewed up with some other stars and singers. And also Juanita Cowart. Wanda Young and Gladys Horton both sang lead at different times. So they also recorded under the name of the Darnells too. So
These nights be just like the 4th of July, with stars spangle the sky. The moon at night shines so bright, to shine twice as bright. When you're young and in love, dreams can come true. Your dreams, if you believe they do. When you're young and in love, so many teardrops about to fall. True love can come when you're young and in love, just stand by. Ooh, yeah. There's no mountain you can climb. When you're young and in love, so many teardrops are bound to fall. Ooh, love can conquer all. When you're young and in love, you never fall in love. Ooh, yeah.
yeah, so you also know them for Please Mr. Postman, 1961. It was number 1 in the charts, and it was number 1 in the R&B charts for 7 weeks. Put some respect on their name. The Playboy in 1962 was number 7 on the charts, and Don't Mess with Bill, number 7. I believe we might have played Don't Mess with Bill on one of these episodes, which was number 7 in 1966. And they had several other top 40 charting hits. And they kind of set the precedent for later Motown girl groups like the Supremes. They disbanded in the 1970s. In 1970, though. Let's listen to this next one. It's called The Day You Take One, You Have to Take the Other. Written by none other than the Smokey Robinson and produced by Smokey Robinson. And I know you know who Smokey Robinson is. I don't have to give you background on that, but I'll just tell you he is a founding member of the Miracles until he left to go solo in 1972. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987 and the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1990. I tell to you and discover that today you take one, you're gonna have to take the other. Ooh, didn't want no sleepless night. I want a guy who would treat me right. No, didn't want no tossing and turning. I want a guy to keep the love light burning. All I want is a bad thing to love. Didn't want no bad thing to love. But I tell to you and discover that the day you take one, you're gonna have to take the other. A little bad comes along with every good. You got to take a little sweet. True love never runs through. The life we think is you, but true love can be a beat. No trouble and confusion. The love I want is only an illusion. I have to change my way. I want to stay on my earth all my days. All I want is to be free tonight. Didn't want to make a sacrifice, but I fell to you and discover that the day you take one, you're gonna have to take the other. Ooh, yeah. Hey, good old Smokey Robinson, written, arranged, and produced by Smokey Robinson. That one there. It's called The Day You Take One, You Have to Take the Other by the Marvelettes. This was released on Tamla, and we just got finished talking about how Tamla was the precursor to Motown. Started in January 12, 1959. Barry Gordy Jr. borrowed $800 from his family's loan fund to make a record label. He originally wanted to call it Tammy after a Debbie Reynolds film of the same name, but it was already taken. And so later that year, that's where he started the second label, Motown, and then he incorporated, like I said, in March of 1960, and made Motown the parent label. Yada, yada, yada. If you're looking for that reprint or reproduction of that Marvelettes classic right there, you're going to have to holler at the Big Dog Universal Music Group, because that is where it lies now. This is our last record of the episode from Mommy's Pocketbook, discovering what was hot in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. What were the youth and young adults of yesteryear listening to? What was hot in the streets back in them days? This is how I find out. Digging in Mommy's Pocketbook, said, oh, okay. Deodato. You know anything about Deodato? First name, Ymir. He's a Brazilian musician, composer, arranger, producer, known for his 1979 to 82 production work for Kool in the Game. Let's check him out. This one is called Rhapsody in Blue, and you probably know Rhapsody in Blue from the first time it was made, when it was done by the composer George Gershwin. So let's see what Deodato did with his. composer, arranger, producer, known for his 1979 to 82 work with Kool and the Gang. But if you can tell, he's also was really adept at composing TV and film scores. That sounds like a TV and a film score right there. Primarily working with jazz, but he was very much known for melding big band and jazz and with varying elements of pop, rock, R&B, funk, Brazilian, Latin, symphonic, or orchestral music. Hence him redoing Rhapsody in Blue in this manner. I wasn't ready, but I like it. It made me feel like I was getting ready to watch an action adventure TV show coming on too. So that was Diodato. Let's listen to the other side. And this also is written by Diodato himself. He got most of his success in the 1970s. This one is called Super Strut. But he's produced and arranged music in more than 500 albums for acts that range from Kool and the Gang, of course, to Bjork and Katie Lang and more. So put some respect on Diodato's name. This one here is called Super Strut. Again, it does have that like TV and film score quality to it, which is one of the things that he was really involved in too. Myself, that guitar was making me make the stank face, and then I would see myself on camera. I'm like, ooh, probably not that face. Anyway, this is Diodato right here. It's called Super Strut, and it is giving all of crime scene chase. which is fitting because he was good at composing TV and film scores, as well as like reworking jazz and big band and melting it down with rock and R&B and funk and symphonic sounds. This was released on CTI Records, which began in 1967 as an imprint of Herb Alpert, another jazz superstar. Herb Alpert's A&M Records, and it was helmed by Creed Taylor, who was a legendary jazz producer. But only 3 years later, it was removed, or kind of dissolved of sorts. But then relaunched. He took CTI from under Herb Alpert's A&M imprint and relaunched CTI as an independent label. But then they kind of faded out again in 1978 because of bankruptcy. But they were back up in 1979 and active until 1984. And then took a hiatus again, and then back in 1989. But after much restructuring and changes in the distribution. So that is the last of our 10 45s that we got on the Mommy's Pocketbook for this week. Glad that you tuned in. Hope that you tune in next time, where we will have 10 more again, okay? Thank you. I have been your host, Zombie, and I will holler at you next time.